Okay, in this unit we're going to discuss the beginnings of interactive multimedia. Now, multimedia differs from video in that it is interactive, meaning that with the video productions, it basically goes linearly, you'll set it going and it goes. Interactivity is basically up to the user to control. So what we're going to talk about is making graphics that will change based on what the user does. And the applications for this are boundless. But they involve web page design and things like flash games or any other type of interactive game that you might find online, or even something as simple as programming apps for cell phones. Those all use the same logic. So for this exercise, all we're going to do is to create a very, very simple button. So simple, in fact, that it is embarrassingly simple. So first of all, we're going to go to our back window here, and we're going to create basically just two primitives. Under the Create tab, I'm going to create a toroid. A toroid is a donut shape, a ring of some sorts. And I'm not even going to bother to change any of the particulars. I'm just going to say, OK, and there suddenly I've got a toroid. And I want the toroid to be facing me, so all I'm going to do is I'm going to go to Modify, I'm going to go to Rotate, and I'm going to rotate that in such a way that it faces me. And I'm going to hit it at 90 degrees. So there's my toroid, and as you can see, it's centered. If I were to hit the numeric key, I would see that it happens to be centered, which is fine. And so then on another layer, putting this in the background, I'm going to create another simple primitive, and I'm going to call that capsule. Under Create, capsule. And I'm going to draw that here. Now a capsule is like a pill. That's literally what it is. So I'm going to make it slightly bigger than the ring. And again, that's going to be centered. And that's fine. So this is the object we're creating. It's basically a button that can be pushed. So if we're in polygon mode, I'm going to highlight that image, and I'm going to go to Change Surface, and I'm going to call that button. And if I go to this, I'm going to highlight that one, Change Surface, and I'm going to call that ring. And that is all the modeling we're going to do. So I'm going to save this, and I'm going to call it button model. And then I'm just going to go up over here, and I'm going to send object to layout, and there it is. So once the object is in layout, as you can see, it is ugly, but we're going to fix that real quick. We're going to leave it on camera view, and I'm basically going to move the camera in. And I'm going to have it slightly off axis, not by much, but just slightly. And then I'm going to rotate the camera just a little bit so we can keep that off axis look and move it in just a little bit more. You'll see why shortly. Okay, so it's terrible, terrible image. So I'm going to go to the surface editor. And as you can see, there are only two surfaces. I'm going to start with the button surface, and I'm basically going to turn on smoothing, which fixes it a little bit, and I'm going to give it a color. So I want this button to be blue, and I want it to be luminous, kind of a little shiny blue button. I can also give it some specularity and some glossiness, so it looks like it's a shiny button. And then for the ring, I'll turn on smoothing there as well. And I'm going to make that kind of a gold color. And give that some specularity and some glossiness. And even some reflection, though I'm not sure to what degree that will matter. And that's it. So if I were to hit F9, that's going to be my button. Not bad. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to establish how big the button's going to be. This is going to be a small button, so if I go to Render, Render Globals, I'll see that my size here is 640 by 480. I'm actually going to make that a lot smaller. I'm going to make that 200 by 200 because buttons typically aren't all that big. And so then, if I hit F9, you see that's how big that button is. And it's actually bigger than it would normally be. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, I'm going to save RGB, and I'm going to put that as a PNG32, and I'm going to create a folder called buttons underscore multimedia. And I'm going to call this button underscore up. So then, all I'm going to do is I'm going to go back to Surface Editor, go to Button, and I'm going to change that color to red. And this one, I'm going to save as button underscore over. And that's basically it. So now we're at a program called Dreamweaver. This is a program that is often used to make websites. And it's an Adobe product now. It used to belong to Macromedia. This is actually an old version of the program, but it's a very simple program, so it doesn't change all that much. So all we're going to do is to make a very simple web page and apply some interactivity. So under Create New, I'm going to hit HTML. And this gives me basically an HTML page. Right now it's blank. Now notice it says untitled there. That's because currently it doesn't even have a title. If you look at these three tabs, which the modern version of Dreamweaver also has, you'll see the code view, which allows you to see the website code. This is nothing more than Notepad. And then you'll see the design view, which allows you to see what the page will look like in the browser. So if we go to code view, you'll notice untitled document in the title. So all I'm going to do is call that button animation. And I'm going to save the file because you have to do that. I'm going to put it in the same folder. I'm going to call that button. And that's basically it. Okay, so if you look at design view, nothing's happened. So here's where we have some fun. I'm going to go down here to page properties, and this would be how you would access the style sheets. All I'm really going to do is give this a background color. And let's say I want to make it kind of a gold color. So that's what the color of the page would look like. And I'm just going to write something. I'm going to write push the button if you dare. And then I'm going to highlight that, and I'm going to make that a headline. So if I go to text up here, I'll make that an H1, and I'll center it. Now see, the act of doing that, if you go to code, you'll see that it writes some code for you. And all it uses is a simple alignment statement, which you didn't have to write. But the next one will be a little more complicated. So let's say we go back to design view, and we want to put the button there. So in code view, I'm going to make sure that it's right below this. And you can work this just like a word processor. And here, all I'm going to do is insert the image. And you do that in this particular case under Common, and you see Image, and you have several options here. Just a standard image. You want to do a rollover image, and this is going to be the same no matter what program you use. And all it's going to do is ask me for the original image and the rollover image. Most of this somebody else would do for you. So this would be the original image, and this would be the rollover image. Simple as that. And when they click on that, I want them to go to a URL. Let's say I make that and I hit OK, and it makes all kinds of code. This is stuff that you don't have to write. And if you look at the design view, there's a button. So we'll leave it like that for now. I'm going to save it. And here's the most important part. We don't want to trust design view. We want to actually look at that in the context of a browser. So if we're here, we've got the file manager, we've got the HTML page, and we've got the two images. That's all that's required to make this work. So if I right-click on the HTML page, I open with, and let's say I choose Google. And there it is. Google will open up the page as if it were found on the internet, and you can see it's got a local address. And here's the important part. If I pass the mouse over the button, it changes. That makes it interactive. And if I press the button, we go to the MU radio station. We go back, here it is. Now the reason why this is important is because if someone was hiring you to work on a website or an interactive application, all they would be asking you to make as a designer is this. And you might make frames and other sundries that you would find on the internet, but most of the actual web page is nothing but either words or a colored background. The graphics actually are very distinctive. That's what gives the web page its distinctiveness, but there's not that many of them. And so that would be your part.